Welcome to Viewing and Reviewing, where I pull older movies off the shelf, watch them, and let you know if I believe they're worth your time to watch or not. I'm Bobby T, your online video store clerk, and I'll be searching through my VHS, DVD, and Blu-ray collection to find titles that I think may be interesting to review. In today's episode, I'll be reviewing 1997's Absolute Power, directed and starring Clint Eastwood, and also starring Gene Hackman, Ed Harris, and Laura Linney. Let me read you the DVD cover. He was where he shouldn't have been and saw what he shouldn't have seen. Now, who will believe the word of a career thief and ex-con? Who will trust Luther Whitney when he sees he saw a woman killed and that the man responsible for her death is the President of the United States? Clint Eastwood portrays Whitney and directs this crisp, finely acted thriller based on David Baldacci's best-selling novel. A stellar cast, which includes Gene Hackman and Ed Harris, creates well-rounded characters that intensify a constantly spiraling game of cat and mouse between Whitney, local police, and the highest levels of White House power. Eastwood is a master at steadily raising the stakes in thrillers. Here, his mastery is absolute. I remember seeing this film in the theater when it came out. Clint Eastwood could do no wrong back then, and honestly, I got what I was expecting. It isn't anything earth-shattering, but seeing Clint pulling a little bit of old-fashioned switcheroo as a master of disguise was kind of rewarding in its own stilted way. I will say, time hasn't been as kind to this film because of all the actors have gone on to bigger and better roles since. Even Eastwood and Gene Hackman did a small film, you guys might remember, called Unforgiven that I recommend regularly, playing opposite sides that won Gene the Oscar. So, watching this film, I was fully expecting to see the ultimate confrontation between predator and prey, but I'd forgotten it really didn't happen, surprisingly enough. This film has somewhat of a slow burn going for it as a thriller that seems to lose its traction every so often in the story. I'm not quite sure why though. Maybe it's how small Gene Hackman's President of the United States' world is. I mean, he's the leader of the free world, but has what seems like only 2 Secret Service guys. Corrupt ones at that, and only his inept chief of staff, but no other underlings. There's no corrupt senators, no trained snipers from the military. He doesn't even seem to have a staff outside of the Oval Office. And honestly, I kind of found Gene's president as a little, weak and a bully. Waiting for others to do his bidding, no matter the cost, but unwilling to do any of the dirty work himself. Actually, he played a really good Trump-like president as a total sleazebag, so I guess he hit it exactly right. But for the most powerful man in the Western world, he didn't play as big as he should have, in my opinion. Now, my understanding is the book this film was based on had a much different feel. Since I don't like giving spoilers away in my reviews, suffice to say Clint's character has a much different outcome in the film than in the book. I'd like to think this film took a lot of the good from the book and put it into the storyline. It was written by William Goldman, so I'm assuming they did. I will say the opening setup of the seduction murder scene was appropriately cringeworthy, as well as as good a setup to a chase sequence as I had seen in the mid-1990s. There's much to be said for good writing when placing all the main characters in the film in the same room without ever knowing that they're present. It's clever storytelling and kept the audience gripped into the inevitable chase sequence into the woods. Although, to be honest, if the President of the United States is pulling a one-night stand at the mansion of one of the richest men in the world, I think the security detail for both the President and the rich guy would have had significantly more bodies and firepower than 2 assholes in business suits chasing a septuagenarian for a mile into the deep forest by themselves with just night vision goggles and 6 shooters. But that's for a different story. I think the Ed Harris's tenacious police detective was a little underdeveloped for my taste, especially his instant infatuation for the Laura Linney character, as it seemed a little too convenient. Chasing the daughter of a notorious ex-con doesn't scream responsible move by an upwardly mobile police detective, but that could just be me. I'd just seen The Truman Show, where these both actors played vastly different characters with a large age difference, and maybe that bled over into my watching of this film, so take that as it may. The rest of the film, though, has some wonderful scenes buried within. Watching Clint's old-fashioned cat burglar, with the emphasis on old in play here, taking on the vast and scary power of the President of the United States, was really well done. Seeing self-important, evil people who deserve to be held accountable for their crimes is rewarding in our current political and legal world. Not trying to make a political statement here, but I gotta say, I'd like how this film ended, even if it is only a fiction. So, my overall report card of the film, it looks like this. Does it stand the test of time? You know, if you'd asked me maybe 10 years ago, I might have said it was showing its age a little. But after our recent political history, I'm going to give this 1997 film an A for being nearly Nostradamus-like in its telling. And Clint is one of the best actors at playing a fully capable old-timer of all time, and always worth a watch. The story. Well, I'm basing my grade on the film's script and not on the book, since I haven't read it. I will give the story a B+. That's not a slight on the film, but like I said earlier, the film's world just seems a little small for all the political intrigue and dangerous situations our characters find themselves in. Eastwood's directing usually seems more intimate and less bombastic than most films, which can be a really good thing in films. But when you're handed a best-selling novel about an aging cat burglar witnessing the President of the United States and his team murdering one of the richest men in the world's wife, and you keep that world so small that the characters never even leave Washington, D.C., even when Eastwood's character's life and that of his family is literally about to end, I find that storytelling a little on the sparse side, but that is just my opinion. The cast. This is one of my easier A grades I've ever given. You have multiple Oscar winners and nominees playing everything from main characters to bit players. Eastwood is the main character, but there are plenty of others that played their roles well, if not necessarily memorable. If you have faces that are pretty much in any scene just popping up, and you'll be saying, "Hey, I know that person," before they just disappear again, never be seen again in the film. From a 1997 Hollywood perspective, this was an easy home run for the casting director. The cinematography. You know, it's an Eastwood film. They all seem to be shot in the same way, and I'll give this a B. I tend to like his small sets in most of his films, but these sets in this film seemed a little formulaic. Even the scene in the middle of the busy downtown DC street felt like a Gladiator film could have been being shot on the other side of the building facades. It just felt like they shot it at a closed Universal Studios set and didn't use much decorating imagination. Same goes for the White House scenes. I felt they shot too many close-ups and should have either pulled back to show a larger world, like an actual White House lawn, or figured a way to green screen with much larger backdrops. The music. Honestly, most Eastwood films seem to have some nice jazzy piano music. I believe Eastwood even plays some of the songs. I'll give it a B-, not because it isn't good, but it isn't really inspiring either. Fine would be a better grade, since it doesn't really take me out of the film, but it also doesn't inspire me to go out tomorrow and buy the soundtrack either. So, based on the above grades, I'm going to give this film an above average B score overall. That may seem a little harsh for some of you out there, but I'm rating this up against all political thrillers of all time. I believe this is a good film. But I also believe there are better films out there that do a little more in terms of expanding the story's world and develops characters a little better than the one-dimensional Secret Service guys or the tone-deaf chief of staff who never seem to be threatening or capable of running an entire country's agenda at any given moment. I'd recommend watching this film if you haven't seen it, but if you have, take half a step back and challenge yourself when you're watching it for originality. This won't set the bar too high, but it also is an easy watch with some really fine acting, and I will say the ending seems more satisfying than I was expecting. So, here are a few other films similar to Absolute Power. No Way Out, one of my favorites. I know, it has Gene Hackman only a couple steps down the political ladder from his president in the previously reviewed film, but this film is one of my favorites, and it is a political actioner as well. An early Kevin Costner film where his Navy hero officer goes to work for the Secretary of Defense at a time where there may be a Russian mole deep inside the Pentagon. At the same time, both Costner and Hackman are seducing the same woman who meets an untimely end that throws their entire world into fast-paced chaos. I used to recommend this all the time at the video stores I worked at and would do it again these many decades later, as it has stood the test of time better than most. Secondly is Enemy of the State with Will Smith and, yes, Gene Hackman again. He's one of my favorites, and I sorely miss him in films. Sorry. Anyway, Will's sharp-edged attorney is unknowingly slipped a video exposing a corrupt CIA operation that murdered a senator. Once the lethal CIA operatives and their cutting-edge electronics target Will, he goes on the run with the reluctant help of a former covert electronics expert to uncover the corruption before they're both killed themselves. And lastly, a film without Gene Hackman, Patriot Games, with Harrison Ford as Jack Ryan, the super CIA spy that saves part of the British royal family in London from a rogue IRA kidnapping attempt. So, the IRA seeks revenge on Ryan's family at the same time the IRA's unit is trying to kill the royal family, who are trying to reward Ryan for his heroism. It's your typical Hunt for Red October action fest, and it hits the ground running. Well, that's it for Absolute Power. If you enjoyed this review, please be sure to click the like button below. If you want to keep up to date on my future reviews, please click on the subscribe button below. If you want to purchase Absolute Power on Blu-ray, or if you wish to purchase any of the other titles I've mentioned earlier, please follow the Amazon links below. If you have any suggestions for movies that you'd like me to review, please leave a comment below, and I'll see what I can do. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, be sure to help others in need because it's always the right thing to do. Have a great week.